As the River Liffey falls downhill from the Wicklow Mountains, past the Coronation Plantation and Kipure Estate, it passes through a fairly barren or open landscape. But once upon a time, this valley would have been a dense old forest, and the river the easiest way through it. Because of that, the riverbank and its environs are the most likely place one would look to find evidence of any ancient settlements or artifacts. Turning up a tributary of the Liffey along the narrow Shankill River Gorge is a beauty spot that draws families and tourists such as archaeologist Dr. Owen Sullivan to visit and enjoy the scenery. Looking around this area, you would have said it had much to excite a geologist rather than anyone else. But nearby there were signs of ancient interest.
So behind us in the distance here, you can make out a little earthen bank here. That little earthen bank is a small portion of a small fort. Now, we haven't excavated it. We don't know the exact date of it, but the indication would suggest that it's probably a medieval fort that was constructed here and intentionally chosen this location at the joining of the river coming down from Cloughlea Bridge and the Liffey Valley. Some people in the past would have seen this as a ring fort, which would be like a settlement for equivalent, I suppose, of a modern day farmstead. We don't know, we don't have evidence of that.
That fort would be found on maps before, and there's no reason for its existence other than possibly the river beside and the River Liffey Highway below. But as Owen walked up the river some years ago now, beyond the over 200-year-old bridge, following the river upstream, he had one of those moments that all archaeologists love when they look at an old forest floor and suddenly recognise there is something man-made about the shapes hiding in the undergrowth.
We're about 50 metres in from the bridge over the river at Cloughlea. I'm standing within a room of an old settlement here.
Up to this point, there have been no reports of any settlement here before, but Owen was certain that he was looking at the remains of a large house, and maybe more.
The date is uncertain. I certainly wouldn't put it any earlier than post-medieval, so you're probably looking at 1700s onwards. These sites aren't shown on the Ordnance Survey map. So this house, the first Ordnance Survey would have been done around the 1830s. The fact that it wasn't shown here as a building that would have probably been standing means it was probably out of usage by the 1830s. So I'd say it was probably something between 1700s and maybe 1800s that this was built. Its exact function we don't know. I mean, ultimately you'd probably have to do either geophysics on the site to see what you might find, or ideally you might do a small little test excavation. You can see a little walkway. So you'd have come up from the river. So you'd have walked up past the long wall of this building. You have a structure here to the right. And then if we go back over this direction, you can see a nice little structure out there, kind of a small square structure. Now, we don't know exactly what they were for. Probably wasn't a house site, it could have been a little byre for cattle. So you've got kind of a byre maybe, a walkway, a little field area, and then the house here. So a small little settlement.
The position of this settlement and the nearby fort raises questions of whether these people from different times knew something about this area that we do not. This is clearly not an easy place to grow crops, a steep and narrow tree-lined gorge. Were they mining? Possibly iron that was found further up the river, Or was there something else? Might there be early finds of gold in the river that brought people to settle in such a narrow bank? There may be clues from the things they left behind, hidden in the ground around. And someday someone might have the time and money to find out what this little part of Wicklow knew that we do not.
If in the future someone was to excavate it archaeologically, they may well find that there's early material underneath it. And that applies for the whole Liffey Valley. And that's, I suppose, what's really intriguing about the whole approach to the Liffey Valley. You've got the river that was consistently there. It was the lifeline. But the land around it has been built up and changed. The monuments have changed. The people have changed. And we're coming back with our pair of eyes today and trying to put ourselves into the shoes of the people who are here at different time periods and tell a little bit of their story. And all we have to go on is things like this, the structures they leave, or the artefacts that we're lucky enough to find.
Thanks to a chance walk and report by Owen years ago, this little settlement, hidden away in the forest, walked over and by, is now listed on the map of monuments and ruins so as to be somewhat protected, and now waits for the curiosity and maybe generosity of future generations to uncover its story. So when you walk in the forests or rivers or valleys of Wicklow in the future, look around and check out the odd-shaped lumps of greenery or strange shapes on the ground. And that discovery may just fundamentally change the way we understand our ancestors all over again. Because all is not known about our past, and each discovery leads to a greater understanding of who we are.